I would love to hear a little bit about your Brooklyn College experience and what kind of made the most impact on you? Like what activities, what clubs, what internships, jobs? It sounds like you have a lot on your plate, and I'm sure now, and I'm sure you probably did at that time as well. So what kind of stands out for you in terms of the experiences that you had at Brooklyn College?
I will say though that I unfortunately, and I was already writing notes in terms of like questions of like what would you do different and what advice would I give. I unfortunately did not study abroad. I had so much on my plate that I couldn't, and I also was already working two jobs while I was in school because I did come from a single family home, and so I needed to help support my family and help my mom out. So I didn't have the luxury of not working, and so it was and at the time, internships were not paid. Most of the internships were not paid. So I couldn't afford to do that. So I think that it's so amazing now that internships are paid and they should be paid because you're working. So I completely advocate for that. I support that. And so unfortunately, I didn't get to experience those two things, although I'm a huge proponent of them now. What I will say is that my education within Brooklyn College academically was top notch. Right. I think that we had professors and still have professors, and I'm gonna put myself in that category now because I am a professor, which is weird.
Yes, you have every right to.
Which is very weird. But that, that really care about their students and hold them accountable. And I think that in my experience in other schools, it was more about the number and paying for that tuition instead of really learning what you're supposed to be learning to create an impact in the world. And so for me, I don't know if you guys have heard this term, but Brooklyn College is called the poor man's Harvard. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Yes.
I can honestly tell you that I truly believe that. I learned so much more in my undergraduate experience at Brooklyn College that I learned in a master's program. And it really set me up for, I breezed through my master's program because of the things that I learned and how I learned it at Brooklyn College and the discipline and the expectation that was set forth for me at Brooklyn College. And so I will also say that although I didn't do internships and study abroad, I did join clubs in the school. So I was president of the Puerto Rican Alliance at Brooklyn College for 2 years. We had a Hispanic society. There was a Latin women's group. There was also a Dominican organization called the Movimiento Estudiantil Dominicano, so the Dominican movement student group. And although we all had our, minor differences, the fact that the Latino community would come together, we would always work hand in partnership with whatever was needed within the school. Socially, of course, we partied together. Politically, we definitely made sure that we advocated and supported each other. We were very much involved in student government and making sure that our budgets reflected the numbers and the needs of the students within the demographics at the time. So, I did that really from the moment I was a freshman to the moment I graduated. So right. I had 8 years of Brooklyn College and the Puerto Rican Alliance and the the Latin women's group. That was the other one that I was a part of. So those really took a lot of my time when I was in school, but so worth it. I think about it now. Oh, and I also joined the Latina sorority that I talked about, Omega Phi Beta, and which is still very much active within, nationally. And so I forgot to mention that I'm also their vice president of expansion nationally, because I have nothing else to do with my life.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you for a sec and just ask you as kind of a follow-up, what skills do you think you developed from being involved in those groups? Because I think it's so important for students to get involved and start developing their leadership skills. But, what are some of the other skills that you developed by being part of those groups? And how do you think that impacted you landing your first job?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, there was so much, but off the top of my head, and I know we're short on time, it's event planning, right? Like coordination of events, logistical, like being very clear and organized in what needs to happen. So when we were planning events for, like, let's say Hispanic Heritage Month, or even our anniversary dinners or whatever, or even in partnership with the Puerto Rican Latino Studies Department, it was logistical, like really identifying keynote speakers, coordinating food and what would that look like and what a decoration. So there was like from soups to nuts, how to really plan an activity. And believe it or not, I do a lot of event planning now in the work that I do with my students. And so that was very helpful, but really just learning how to multitask, I think was like the biggest skill set that I learned. That you still needed to do well in school to be active, right? So that you can get that degree. That was very clearly very important. But that, that you needed to prioritize, and the discipline that came with those priorities was I think the top three things that I learned being a part of those organizations.
Excellent. So organizational skills, planning, multitasking, time management, leadership. I mean, all of those skills that are transferable to really any industry,
Absolutely. Oh, the
right?
networking. I'm sorry to cut you off, Andrea, but I think the
Yeah, it's okay.
networking was probably the most important, right? Because we connected with so many people. And so many stakeholders. So professors, students, other students and professors from other schools when we would do events. And so being able to, or administration of Brooklyn College, when we were trying to, present and advocate for an increase in our budget, there was just something, the professionalism that was taught, I won't say taught, it was modeled by other people, that we were able to really continue the legacy of making sure that Latinos were seen as a force to be reckoned with within Brooklyn College, and that that we could be educated and passionate and continue to be professional.
Right.
Make sure to check out the My Career tab on the BC Navigator app, where you can track your career progress based on the amount of credits you've earned, stay updated on upcoming events from the Magner Center, and watch our videos for insight and advice on your career field.